Boldwood presents The Vatican Conspiracy, written by Rob Jones and read by Simon Mattox. Chapter 1. Professor Marco Vitali hurried through the Vatican's world-famous gallery of maps as fast as his old legs could take him, away from the terrible danger at his back. The alluring beauty of the golden frescoes of Renaissance Italy high above him on the vaulted ceiling often made him late for important meetings, but tonight the 120-metre-long gallery offered nothing but horror, as he struggled to escape a man who'd already fired a shot at him outside in the Belvedere courtyard. The gunman turned a corner behind him and now joined him in the gallery. Vitali heard him call something out, and then he cried out in horror when another gunshot, deafeningly loud, echoed down the gallery. The bullet missed, tearing into an ornate map of Ancona from the 1580s, and Vitali almost jumped out of his skin. Driven forward by pure willpower, he somehow managed to find the energy to gain speed and stagger through the gallery's southwestern door. He sprinted past a right turn leading to the Sistine Chapel and continued east towards his final destination, if he could get there without getting killed. With his heart almost bursting in his chest and his lungs feeling like they were on fire, the director of the Vatican Museums now broke into something approaching a jog as he ascended a set of marble steps. Another gunshot terrified him. Italian authorities had scrapped national service in Italy over 20 years ago, but Vitali's age meant he'd spent 2 years in the Italian army. There, in the ranks with other Italian men his age, he had learnt all about firearms and had heard many guns being fired. But there was something incongruous and terrifying about such a weapon being used in a place as quiet and sacred as this. This, plus the knowledge he was apparently this madman's target, turned his stomach. "Help!" he cried out, knowing how few people would be here at this time of night. "Help! Security!" No one came. Sprinting through another vast hall filled with yet more Renaissance and classical masterpieces, the director felt his blood turn to ice when the man pursuing him turned another corner, ran into view, and screamed at him once again to stop, before firing his weapon a fourth time. The bullet sliced through Vitali's upper arm, making him cry out in agony as he felt a terrible searing pain burning through his flesh, but a profound sense of urgency and fear kept powering him onwards. He continued running as he reached over and checked the seriousness of the wound. It was no more than a graze, but it hurt to his core. This was the least of his worries. He was running out of energy, and the assassin behind was closing fast. Seeing a security guard step through a door a few meters ahead of him, the director felt a momentary pulse of hope. The guard must have heard the shooting and was responding, as his training demanded. He now reached for the weapon holstered on a leather belt around his waist and, with a look of confusion on his face, ordered the director out of the way. Vitali was only too happy to comply and shifted out of the way as the security guard brought his weapon to bear, aiming it at the assassin behind him, but the pursuing gunman was too fast. He opened fire on the security guard, and Vitali, still stumbling mindlessly forward, watched in horror as the security guard's chest exploded, a row of bullets punching through his white shirt and piercing his heart and lungs. He staggered backwards and crashed to the floor, dying moments later. The panic-stricken art historian had not stopped moving forward, but he had slowed, in the hope that the security guard might end the threat. Now he began to speed up again, realizing how close he was to his own death. Rounding another corner, he saw a much grander flight of marble steps in front of him. They led up to the next floor, where he would find the office of his superior, Archbishop Giovanni Rovina. The cardinal was his superior and the only other person he knew who would be working so late after midnight. Not only that, but he also had a telephone in his office. Vitali had often been the brunt of jokes because of his outright refusal to own a mobile phone, but now his adamant rejection of the technology was not so funny. If he could get to the cardinal's office, he could call for help and alert the Corps of Gendarmerie, the Vatican City's private police force. Taking the flight of marble stairs 2 at a time soon proved too much for him, as he had already anticipated, and his slowing down to 1 by 1 seemed agonizingly slow. He'd barely made the top when the man turned the corner. "You can't run forever! Why are you doing this?" Vitali cried out, but he already knew the answer. He knew something he wasn't supposed to know, and now he was going to pay for it. He cursed himself for being so naive and carrying on as if there was no threat. Earlier, he had ended his working day at his usual late hour and was walking back to his car when he saw the man standing in the car park inside the Belvedere courtyard, watching him. The director had worked at the Vatican for so many years, he knew practically everyone on the staff, and he certainly did not recognize this man. More suspicious, he wasn't wearing professional clothes or even a tie, but was dressed in black jeans and a black roll neck, and so Vitali had decided to approach him when the man had raised a pistol and aimed it at his head. Vitali had bolted back inside the gallery of maps in desperate fear of his life. But the assassin had given pursuit. "I can't let you live, Professor Vitali." "Who are you?" Vitali had desperately called out over his shoulder as he stumbled away. Another gunshot knocked Vitali out of his confused thoughts. This one blew a marble newel cap to pieces, sending a shower of stone splinters and dust into the air inches from the director's face. Instinctively, the old art historian reached up to shield his eyes and cried out in pain as he agitated the gunshot wound on his arm. Who was this man? Why was he hunting him like a wild animal through the palace? Just because he asked him to identify himself, or to stop him raising the alarm? The director's mind raced with questions, but confronted with another flight of marble steps, he focused his energies on the single task of ascending it. Behind him, he heard the man laughing now, and the sound of his boots slapping down on the first flight of stairs seemed to grow ever louder. This terrifying sound, and the obvious corollary that came with it, in this case his murder, galvanized him, and he made the second flight of stairs even quicker than the first. His heart rate was wild now, and although he knew it would only last for a short time, he had the extra energy he needed, at least to get as far as the cardinal's office. The man behind him turned the corner on the landing and was racing up the second flight of stairs just as Vitali reached Cardinal Ravina's office. This was a private part of the palace where senior members of the church worked, and now Vitali prayed that his superior was working late as usual. In an absurd display of habit, he now knocked on the cardinal's door, but turning and seeing the assassin raising the weapon into the aim and pointing it directly at him, he turned the handle and burst into the office. His prayers were answered when he saw Ravina sitting at his grand desk on the far side of his enormous and luxurious office. The cardinal, who was the president of the governorate of Vatican City-State, looked up from his paperwork with a look of confusion on his furrowed brow. "Professor Vitali?" he asked, setting down his expensive fountain pen on the desk and narrowing his eyes. "What on earth is the meaning of this intrusion? It's after midnight." Vitali wasted no time answering the cardinal's question, but turned and closed the door behind him. His heart almost leapt into his throat when he saw there was no key in the lock. "Do you have a key for this door?" Ravina frowned. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. A key? Why?" Vitali raised his voice, something he had never done in the 15 years of working for the cardinal. "I asked you if you had a key to this door." "Director!" Vitali immediately backed down, seeing the anger on his superior's face. Ravina was an honest and hard-working man, but he was accustomed to receiving the deference his senior rank within the church allowed him. Outside in the corridor, the footsteps grew louder. "I'm sorry, Cardinal. I didn't mean to shout. It's just that we're in great danger. A man with a gun has been chasing me through the palace." Ravina looked shocked. "What are you talking about? My lord, have you been hit? You're bleeding." Vitali reached up to the wound on his arm absent-mindedly. In all the terror, he had forgotten he had sustained a minor gunshot wound. "I was walking back to my car after my evening work when I saw him in the car park. Something about him looked wrong. I should have called security, but I have no phone. He pointed a gun at me and I ran inside the gallery of maps. Then he attacked me.
He actually fired his gun at me. I could think only of reaching your office so that you could call for help. One of his bullets hit my arm."
Ravina now rose from his desk, a look of grave concern on his face, and walked over to Vitali.
"Where is this man now?"
Vitali was about to answer when the door was smashed open. The gunman burst into the sumptuous office with a big, ugly, matte black Glock 17 handgun raised into the air. Vitali raised his hands and was about to start pleading with the man when he realized with abject horror that there would be no negotiation. He saw from the look in the man's eyes that he had certainly come here to kill him, perhaps both of them. In that split second, the gunman fired 2 rounds into Vitali's chest and blasted him off his feet. It felt like someone had struck him with a hammer. He crashed down onto the blue and ivory Persian rug in the middle of Ravina's office and reached up to the wounds, each one massively more serious than the earlier flesh wound on his arm. Lethally serious. He had never felt anything like this before, a feeling that he'd been punched hard twice and then run through with a red-hot poker. The pain was agonizing, but even worse, he was finding it difficult to breathe. He tasted blood bubbling up in his throat and knew a bullet must have punctured his lungs. Had one of them also burst through his heart? He rested his head back on the carpet and stared up at the ornate, vaulted ceiling in Ravina's office, blinking stupidly and only vaguely aware of the other men in the room. He struggled even more to breathe because of the blood blocking his airway, and his blood pressure was dropping. His vision grew weaker, and he was beginning to lose his hearing. He had heard once from a soldier in the army that was the first sign that you were nearing the end. He looked up to see the gunman now pointing the gun at Cardinal Ravina, screaming at him to get on his knees. Why was this happening? Would he die here? Blinking his watering eyes, he noticed a strange tattoo on the man's arm. At first, it made no sense, but then it came to him. He felt a wave of horror at the realization. But what could such a symbol mean in here, of all places? He watched in sad desperation as Cardinal Giovanni Ravina obeyed the gunman and knelt on the rug. The assassin roughly grabbed his arms and handcuffed them behind his back. The gunman now pulled something from his back pocket. At first, Vitali was unsure what it was, but then he realized it was a black hood, which the gunman now roughly slipped over Ravina's head and pulled tight. Now the gunman took something else from his pocket, a piece of paper which he put on Ravina's desk. Then he dragged Ravina up to his feet and put the gun to the back of his head, screaming at him in some foreign language Vitali didn't recognize, but obviously ordering him out of the office. Vitali watched the thug forcing Ravina at gunpoint out of the office, hooded and handcuffed. Then they were out of sight. Vitali was alone. He stared up at the ceiling at a fresco the Cardinal had personally commissioned. It was a beautiful copy of Raphael's painting The Transfiguration, one of Ravina's favourites. It depicted Christ appearing in divine glory as he ascended to heaven. Vitali's belief was not as pure and powerful as that of Ravina's, but had grown more so the older he had become. Now, as he stared up at the beautiful fresco of Jesus ascending into heaven, he hoped and prayed that he would soon be joining him. Then he remembered the tattoo he had seen on the man's arm. With seconds to live, Vitali now reached up to his chest and dipped his finger in his own blood. Then he set to work on the ivory carpet. Chapter 2. Max Hunter was grateful that UNESCO had exceeded his expectations, at least on the point of an apartment rental in Rome. He was in the city on a temporary assignment at the Vatican, and the property was on the top floor of a townhouse in Trastevere on the north bank of the Tiber, giving a picture postcard view of the Ponte Palatino crossing the famous river. There were 2 bedrooms, a large, well-appointed bathroom, and an open kitchen living area with clean white walls and a white tiled floor. It was in this kitchen, in the middle of the night, where he was currently cursing the makers of the Ferretti F-19, a luxury super-automatic espresso machine with a monstrous operating manual roughly the same length as the SpaceX Starship launch checklist. The main problem, as he saw it, was that it seemed to require connection to the internet via his smartphone. He couldn't guess why, but the manual patiently explained that this way he could, should the mood seize him on a hot Roman day, order an iced flat white macchiato affogato with flavoured syrup microfoam to be all ready for him when he stepped through the front door. He had no idea what such a creation was, nor why there would ever be such a pressing need for one, but he knew it was currently slowing down his efforts at making a regular flat white, which simply required combining the devilish mix of hot water, coffee, and milk. There were other problems. The second hurdle, after tracking down the Wi-Fi key and connecting to a satellite, was getting past the beachhead of programmable drink profiles. This seemed to be preventing him from simply ordering a bespoke coffee, and instead there was a requirement that he had to set up an automatic selection list on a preset menu. Now he remembered why he had put this off. After this, higher up the Coffee Beach landing ground were the twin machine gun turrets called the Dual Thermoblock Boiler System and the Milk Frothing System, both of which followed the general trend and seemed unnecessarily complicated to master, involving the simultaneous operation of a complex series of buttons and levers. Never mind a sodding coffee, he thought. I need a real drink. Throwing the operating menu down on the countertop, Hunter opened the fridge and pulled out a chilled bottle of Peroni. Making a note to buy a cafetiere in the morning, he stepped out onto the balcony and watched the streetlights sparkling on the surface of the Tiber. Directly below the apartment building, occasional traffic cruised by, mirrored on the far side of the river on the much busier Longotevere Aventino. Far enough away in both time and distance from his latest nemesis, the Ferretti F-19, Hunter was finally able to relax. He crashed down on a patio chair and swung his long legs up on the matching table, blowing out a long breath and taking a pull from the lager bottle. Thoughts turned to his life. After the business in Egypt with the burning bush, the US government had shut down the HARPA team, and each member had gone their separate ways, all except Amy and Hunter, who were living together in her Georgetown apartment. All good, but they needed money. As a US citizen and full-time FBI agent, Amy had been suspended with pay, but Hunter's unique consultant status in the team meant no more cash for him. He chose to cover the gaps, returning to UNESCO, and his first job had been an assignment here in Italy. That meant being away from Amy, but, as his old English teacher, quoting the Bard, once told him, he must needs go that the devil drives. He'd been working at the Vatican City for 10 days now and decided today was the day to confront two problems. The first had been a disaster, which was telling his boss at UNESCO, Professor Juliette Bonaire, that the assignment in Rome would require more time and money. The second had been the decision to switch from instant coffee granules to the Ferretti. Both could have gone better. The coffee debacle was solved easily enough with his cafetiere decision, but Juliette was unhappy about his request for more of the two resources, and a short argument ensued. Hunter took another sip of his lager and wondered why arguments with Juliette were usually resoundingly won by her, as was the case this time. She had told him he had to complete the assignment under the terms of the original budget. Tu le feras comme ça, un point c'est tout, she said smoothly. On ne va pas passer la nuit. My way, or the auto route, in other words, he thought, smirking at his little joke. He took another sip from the bottle before it got warm, or so he told himself, and wondered what Amy was doing now. He missed Amy, and he missed HARPA. He also found himself wondering about Sal Blanco, Jodie Priest, Ben Lewis, and Quinn Mosley, also known as the rest of the team. He knew Blanco was finally making his beloved pizzas with his brother Angelo in Brooklyn, but he was less certain about what the others were doing. It was around midnight here in Rome, so that meant, damn the maths, it was sometime after lunch in Washington, D.C. He decided to Zoom Amy. She wasn't at the office at FBI headquarters, that was for sure. He slid open the door and stepped back into the apartment. Setting his Peroni down on the glass-top dining room table, he fired up his laptop and took a chance that Amy and her laptop were both awake and around for the call. They were. "Hey, Max," she said, with a beaming smile. "I thought we were going to speak later tonight. My time, I mean, before you go to work in the morning." I got bored, Hunter said, as he walked the laptop over to a soft chair. Gee, thanks. I don't mean it, you fool. I missed you. She looked sceptical. Have you been drinking? Half of one bottle of Peroni. That explains it. He smiled. That's more like it. There's the Amy I know and love. She returned his smile and took a sip of coffee. Why are you frowning? Coffee, he said. What about it? I thought the Italians made great coffee. That's what Sal says. Tonight my soul was crushed by an espresso machine. She weighed that up. Sounds like some lyrics from one of those Smiths albums you made me listen to. Yeah, well, it's really serious, he said, waiting for her to catch the reference. She didn't. She obviously hadn't been listening that hard. The sodding coffee machine here at the apartment is so bloody complicated I can barely turn it on. I feel like an idiot. Hey, don't be so hard on yourself, she said, sipping more coffee. Everyone has their limitations, after all. You more than most. Gee, thanks. She gave him a mischievous wink. Anyway, I bet I could get that thing working in a heartbeat. Give me the model details, and I'll look it up online. He shook his head. No, it's no use. It's more than simply following details. It hates me. It's personal. Amy started to laugh. Come on, Max. It won't beat me, though, he said defiantly. I'm going to get a cafetiere. Amy frowned. You mean a French press? No, I mean a cafetiere. You mean a French press. Whatever we call it. Are you sure you'll be able to make it work? That little piston thing you push down can be quite a challenge. I'm beginning to regret calling you, truth be told. Aw, that is not true, Maximilian. I thought we agreed not to call me that, Amadea. Yeah, let's go back to that agreement. Consider the treaty renewed. Hunter sipped some lager and relaxed again, sinking into the soft chair. It was good to talk to Amy again, Barb's included. I asked Juliet about the resources thing. Amy frowned. Don't tell me. It was a big fat no. Right again. At least that means you'll be back home in D.C. sooner, though. This was true enough, but there was more to it than that. The problem is, I just don't think the work can be done in the time, and I need more assistance. Marco Vitali is a great guy and all, but not even he could get more resources our way, and he's the director of the Vatican Museums. Juliet was my last chance. That's too bad, Max. I don't know what to say. I'm having lunch with Marco tomorrow, he said with a sigh. Maybe I'll have another go and ask him again. Good idea. And if that fails, maybe... A knock at the door, so loud it made Hunter start in his chair, almost spilling his lager. Who the hell is that at this hour? He said. Amy leant in, narrowing her eyes. Max? What's going on? Someone just hammered on the door, and it's after midnight. She paused. Is that usual? He gave her a look. Really? She shrugged. Maybe it's a neighbour, coming around to help out with the espresso machine. More loud banging on the door. He heard a woman calling out his name. Hunter shifted out of the seat and put the laptop on the coffee table. You stay right there. I'm going to find out what this is all about. Hunter went to the door, wished there was a spy hole, and then opened it. In front of him was a woman in a navy blue suit. She had raven black shoulder-length hair and dark, impenetrable eyes. She was holding a police badge featuring the Vatican coat of arms. Dr. Max Hunter? He nodded. Yes. I'm Inspector Martina Rinaldi, of the Corps of Gendarmerie of Vatican City State. I must ask that you come with me to Vatican City at once. Why? I can't talk about it here. Hunter felt a wave of indignation rising. Just hang on a second. It's after midnight. I'm tired after a long day's work, and I'm in the middle of a personal call. Whatever it is, it can wait. Fine. The woman's face showed no emotion in response to his pleas. It's Professor Marco Vitali, she said quietly. He was murdered tonight, and we believe you may be of assistance in our inquiries. There is an easy way to do this, Dr. Hunter, and a hard way. Hunter felt his blood run cold, but then snapped back into the moment. Marco murdered? It didn't seem possible. Wait there, please. I need my jacket. He walked over to the laptop, pulling his leather jacket from the back of a chair on the way, and then peered down at the camera. Amy, sorry about this, but I gotta go. She looked confused. Is this about the knocking on the door? What's going on? It's Marco, he said, confused. He's been murdered. I have to go. My God, that's terrible. Did they say anything else? Not yet. I'll call you as soon as I know more. And with that, Hunter slammed the laptop shut, stepped out into the corridor, locked the door, and followed Inspector Rinaldi out of the townhouse to an unmarked Volkswagen Passat parked outside. It had been a tough day, but something told Hunter the night was going to be even worse. Chapter 3. When Inspector Rinaldi fired up the Passat and pulled out onto the road, Hunter was surprised to see she was alone in the car, but also that they were flanked by two outriders on marked Ducati police motorcycles. This meant whatever had happened to Marco Vitali was more than a common murder, but it also meant they didn't suspect him of any foul play. Had they considered him a dangerous murder suspect, there would be other armed officers in the Passat, probably in uniform, and he would be in handcuffs. Then there was his sense of shock and disbelief. Hunter had known Marco Vitali for a long time, and the two men had often worked together, becoming good friends. Thoughts of his old friend being dead, and worse, murdered, cascaded through his mind like a waterfall over rocks. "I hope you don't mind my asking, Inspector Rinaldi," Hunter said firmly, as the policewoman changed down into second gear for a tight bend, "but would you mind furnishing me with the answers to a few questions I have?" She checked her mirrors and straightened the car up, just a few meters behind the two motorbikes, their blue lights strobing the tan plaster walls of the Roman side streets as they flashed by in a blur. "Go ahead. I'll say what I can. What details can you give me about the murder? Are you even sure it was murder?" Her eyes flicked at him, then back to the road. They were now making good time along the Longotevere degli Aguilara, a long, relatively straight road heading east along the Tiber. "That it was murder is without doubt. As for details, you will see for yourself. But the professor was shot twice, perhaps 3 times, inside the Vatican." Hunter felt ice in his veins once again. Imagining such a terrible thing happening to Marco, who'd not only shown him the ropes at the Vatican, but also the best places to eat in Rome, being murdered in such a brutal way, was not easy for Max. Worse, he'd only talked with him a few hours ago, just before leaving work for the day. His mind was suddenly bursting with even more questions, starting with the obvious. "I know I worked with Professor Vitali, but why are you taking me into the Vatican tonight? I don't know how police business is done in Italy, but where I come from, it's not normal to take civilians into the heart of a crime scene." The Passat raced along a wide, tree-lined boulevard behind the police bikes, other motorists moving aside in response to the sirens and flashing blue lights. Martina glanced at Hunter once again. "I'm sorry, but that is something I'm not at liberty to discuss with you at the moment." Hunter turned and looked at her as she was concentrating on pursuing the outriders at speed through the busy streets. He was having enough trouble fighting a sense of confusion and anger about the loss of a friend without having to deal with a difficult and obstructive police officer. "I'm sorry, but that's just not good enough, Inspector Rinaldi. You just dragged me out in the middle of the night and demanded my immediate presence at the Vatican to attend a murder scene. Not only that, but we're talking about the murder of a man who I've known for many years, thanks to my work at UNESCO, and with whom I've been working most recently for nearly 2 weeks. I think when I ask you why I'm sitting in this car right now, I deserve an answer." He noticed a slight upturn in the corner of her mouth, presumably in response to his unexpected defiance. "And when I tell you that I am not at liberty to discuss something with you, then that is exactly the case. You will be given more details when we arrive at the Vatican. There you can speak to my superior, Commissario Barone. Those are his instructions, and I cannot disobey direct orders from the Commissario." Realizing he was getting nowhere in a hurry, Hunter looked out of his window and watched the streets for a few moments. It was late at night, but, like Paris, Rome was a busy place with a heart that never stopped beating, and unexpected warm weather meant there were still many people milling around on the pavements. He saw gangs of youths, lovers arm in arm, even an elderly gentleman in an expensive suit and silk scarf smoking a cigarette and walking a Pomeranian. Now and again he caught a flash of the moon's reflection on the Tiber, but nothing could distract him from what had happened this evening, and why the Vatican authorities were in such a rush to get him to the scene of Marco Vitali's murder. Hunter turned his attention back to the car's interior and decided to try again. "Can you at least tell me what time the professor was murdered?"
"We are not entirely sure, but within the last hour. The police doctor has not had time to do a full report, but those are his preliminary findings so far."
"So you're telling me the director of the Vatican Museums is murdered while at work in the Vatican in the middle of the night, and within 60 minutes you've come out here to get a UNESCO archaeologist on temporary assignment at the Vatican and rush him to the crime scene? Why?"
"Please, Dr. Hunter, stop. I have already told you I am not discussing the reasons why the Commissario has asked me to get you. We will be there in a few minutes, so you can ask him yourself when we get there. I will tell you this, though. There will be very senior figures there when we arrive. You should prepare yourself for that."
"What do you mean by very senior figures?" Hunter asked. "Do you mean from the Vatican Gendarmerie or the Holy See?"
"Both, and very likely Europol and Interpol as well."
This last information caught Hunter's attention. Although it was already interesting enough that the top brass of both the Gendarmerie and the Holy See were going to be present at the crime scene, the presence of senior figures of Europol and Interpol at the scene meant serious trouble. Both were international law enforcement agencies, and, to a large extent, certainly within the European Union, they overlapped. The Vatican City, and Rome being in Italy, meant it was easy enough for Hunter to understand why Europol might be involved, but it was Interpol, the branch with a much wider international remit, that really rang some bells. Whatever was going on, it looked like it might extend beyond the European Union. "I don't suppose there's any point in my asking you why such senior figures across these various agencies are all going to be there tonight?"
"Absolutely no point at all,"
the inspector said, with another vague hint of a smirk.
"I have already told you too much just by telling you that they're going to be there. Please, don't tell the Commissario that I briefed you about it when you're talking to him. He is a fair man, but he will not respond well to a junior disobeying his strict orders."
"If you're prepared to disobey his orders on that, then why can't you tell me why I am personally required at the Vatican tonight?"
"You'll understand when you find out."
Chapter 4. Inspector Rinaldi had barely finished her sentence when she stamped down on the Passat's throttle and raced across the Piazza della Rovere in pursuit of the bikes, which were doing an efficient job of clearing the road for her unmarked car. Hunter checked his watch. They had been driving less than 5 minutes, but it seemed like much longer. He thought back to his earlier conversation with Amy and wondered how tonight's strange turn of events would affect his life. Firstly, he supposed it was an easy guess to assume that his assignment at the Vatican would be coming to an abrupt halt, at least until this business with Vitali was sorted out. That in itself might mean his earlier return to Washington, D.C., but it could also mean a significant delay to it, depending on exactly why his presence was required tonight. Up ahead, Hunter saw the Porta Santo Spirito, one of the original gates of the Leonine city's ancient wall, built over 1,000 years ago on the instructions of Pope Leo IV. Martina raced the Passat down a narrow road, lined on both sides with parked cars, and blew through Porta Santo Spirito at high speed. Thinking of Amy, Hunter's mind turned to the obvious thought. Was he going to need her, or even the rest of the HARPA team, to deal with whatever was about to be thrown at him? Without giving it a second thought, he now reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Moments later, his thumb was busy advising Amy to be prepared for an incoming call requesting assistance not only from her, but also from the rest of the team, if it was possible to find them at such short notice. Inspector Rinaldi reached across, plucked his phone from his hands, and dropped it in the side pocket of her door. "What the hell are you doing?" Hunter asked. "That's my phone."
"This is a murder inquiry, Dr. Hunter. I can't let you send messages. You could be informing anyone of anything at this time."
Hunter rolled his eyes. "Yeah, because you've told me so much."
"I think we both know what I'm talking about," she said firmly, spinning the steering wheel and accelerating out of a bend.
Hunter sighed. The blue lights of the bikes ahead were streaking up the terracotta plaster wall of the Santo Spirito in Sassia, the Church of the Holy Spirit. A beautiful 12th century church, built on the site of the English King Inez Saxon School, Europe's oldest hospital. Hunter had planned to visit and make a pleasant tourist day out of the site at some point, but now he had a strange feeling this would have to wait until the next time he was in the city. And when might I expect to get my phone back? The Passat raced across the Borgo Santo Spirito, leaving behind the cream plaster facade of the ancient church, and after a short drive down another side street, they burst onto the Via della Conciliazione, the broad cobblestone avenue leading to one of the most famous views in the world, St. Peter's Square. "As you can see, we are almost there. I will give you your phone back when we are walking to the palace." "Grazie mille," he muttered under his breath. Up ahead, the outriders swerved hard to the right and skirted around the eastern side of the curved colonnade, encompassing much of the world-famous piazza. They now made another sharp right turn, driving through a double-arched bridge and an almost immediate left before turning up the Via Sant'Anna. Moments later, they came to a sudden stop outside a wooden door built into a high brick wall. As the two outriders switched off their bikes, climbed off them and removed their helmets, one of them ran up some steps to the door and banged loudly on it, while the other strolled over to the Passat, helmet tucked neatly under his arm. Martina unbuckled her seatbelt, opened the door, slipped her hand into the side pocket to retrieve Hunter's telephone, and then stepped out into the Roman night without saying a word. Hunter guessed that he should follow suit, and a moment later the two of them were standing side by side as Martina and the motorbike driver spoke in hushed, rapid Italian. Hunter couldn't follow it, but he did catch the word Papa, which in this case referred to the Pope. Making a silent prayer that the Pope would not be one of the senior figures of the Holy See present at the murder scene, he now followed Martina up the steps to the door. The other officer nodded in acknowledgement as he walked past them and went down to his colleague. As the two policemen climbed back on their bikes and started up the engines, a man in a Vatican City Gendarmerie Corps uniform, complete with the famous blue-grey kepi hat, similar to that worn by the French gendarme, stood to attention and saluted Martina. They also spoke in Italian, and this time Hunter understood not even one word. "Follow me," Martina said, turning to him briefly. "And is your phone?" Hunter caught the phone and tried to say thanks, but before he could reply, Martina was gone, her heels striking the stone-tiled floor of a long corridor. She walked towards a lift, the doors of which she opened with a key on a keyring attached to her belt, and the two of them stepped inside. "This goes directly to the floor in the palace that we need to go to." "So we're in the Apostolic Palace right now, then?" Hunter asked. She looked at him like he might be a little bit crazy. "Yes, of course we are. I thought you would have known. Hey, it's dark outside, and I'm not that familiar with Rome. All of my work here at the Vatican has been inside the Vatican museums, which, I might add, is where Professor Vitali's office is located, nowhere near the palace." "Well, that is where he was murdered," Martina said coldly. "Inside the personal office of Cardinal Ravina." Hunter was more than a little intrigued at this new information, which he guessed she had let slip because he was only moments away from seeing the cat let out of the bag somewhere upstairs. With that thought, the lift came to a gentle stop with a light ping, and the doors swished open. They were met by two armed gendarmes standing opposite the lift's entrance. They were carrying Glock 17s in holsters. Hunter knew these were standard-issue weapons in the Vatican City Gendarmerie, but what interested him much more was the man holding the Beretta M12 submachine gun directly outside the office of Cardinal Giovanni Ravina. The man with the M12 recognized Martina, stepping aside and opening the door. "Grazie, gendarme," Martina said, walking inside. Moving inside the Cardinal's private offices, Hunter was shocked by the coterie of senior figures he saw, despite Martina's warning. He was more taken aback by the figure of his old friend Marco Vitali, now beneath a white sheet on the floor a few meters away, equidistant from the door and the Cardinal's desk. A cloud of blood had bloomed on the sheet's clean white surface. "Dr. Hunter," said a man, stepping forward. "That's right. I am Commissario, Commissioner Sergio Barone, head of the Directorate for Security Services and Civil Protection of the Vatican City-State, as well as Commander
of the Gendarmerie Corps. Thank you very much for coming at such short notice."
The two men shook hands. I wasn't given much choice. Baroni nodded in acknowledgement.
"Inspector Rinaldi is a good officer, which is why I gave her the task of bringing you here tonight. Please allow me to introduce Fabio Romano, the director of Europol here in Italy, Caterina Russo, the head of Interpol in Italy, and this is Cardinal Horst Schäfer, the Vatican Secretary of State. He answers directly to His Holiness the Pope."
Hunter shook their hands as they tried to assess the situation, their eyes flicking once again to Vitali's body.
"This is all very difficult to process." "I am sure it is," Baroni said briskly. "I know you must be very confused, and I am sorry about Professor Vitali. I understand you were close."
"Yes, but this isn't his office," Hunter said. "I saw that when Inspector Rinaldi walked me in. There was a brass nameplate on the door saying Cardinal
Giovanni Rovina,"
Baroni said, finishing the name with a natural Italian flourish.
"He is the president of the Governorate Archbishop."
Hunter nodded, aware of Rovina, through Vitali, but never having met the man. Being on a temporary contract to work at the Vatican, he had not met anyone superior in rank to Vitali, who, as the director of the Vatican Museums, was his immediate line manager. But why was Marco in here so late at night? And where is Rovina? Is he at home? Baroni's face became grave.
"Most cardinals and archbishops live close by, but still outside the Vatican walls. But as a very high-ranking cardinal with a key position in the Roman Curia, Cardinal Rovina occupies private apartments here in Vatican City itself. So we have already checked his apartment, and he is not there. When he was last there, I cannot say. But while there is a sign of his breakfast, there is no sign of any other meal there, and the entire apartment was in darkness."
Hunter considered what Baroni was saying. "You're suggesting something has happened to him as well?" Baroni now tipped his head, acknowledging the possibility.
"But not murder. If they wanted to kill him, then why not here, at the same time as the professor? No, I think they took him."
"Kidnap?"
"I believe so. Now, we must move fast. Please, take a look at this."
With no further words, Baroni stepped over to the desk and handed Hunter an A5 piece of paper covered in handwriting.
"Please, read this. It is in English. I translated it from the original document found here at the crime scene."
Hunter took the paper and stared down at the words, hardly able to believe what he was holding in his hands. Chapter 5. Not even Il Conte knew Lupo's real name, and Count Dante Borgia knew everything. Lupo sometimes wondered if there was anything the strange man with the piercing eyes and silver beard did not know. He was thinking this now as the Renault traffic van he was driving in weaved and meandered ever deeper into the Lazio countryside. Lupo meant wolf, a fitting nickname for a man in his profession, but Borgia was genuine Italian nobility, or so he said. He claimed to be the disinherited son of a Venetian patrician family dating back to the 14th century, but there was little evidence of it. After the Italian government abolished the monarchy in 1946, so ended the legal recognition of all aristocratic titles and honours. Many unscrupulous people were able to make such claims, especially to those outside noble circles. And you didn't get much further from noble circles than the wolf. Lupo glanced at Borgia now, his smooth aquiline nose, his cold grey eyes framed by bushy eyebrows, a face haunted by dark past deeds and uncertain visions of destiny. Destiny that, with hard work and a little luck, would soon be coming to fruition.
"Cardinal Rovina did not appreciate being forced into the back of the van," Borgia said, not taking his eyes off the road. "The good cardinal is too used to being cosseted," Lupo said with a smirk. "Isn't that right, Cardinal Rovina?"
Lupo twisted in the driver's seat and banged on the bulkhead behind him.
"Isn't that so, Your Eminence?"
There was no response, causing Lupo to give a loud belly laugh. Borgia's face remained tight and cold. Lupo never even noticed that his joke had failed to land with the man sitting beside him, and soon returned his eyes to the road as he pushed the van further east into the mountains, leaving the city of Rome far behind in their rearview mirror. The assassin from Turin didn't give a damn anyway. His role inside the Brotherhood of the Serpent was simple enough. He was a hired gun whose vast experience in killing humans was of much use to the ancient cult. Whether or not a man like Borgia could take a joke was irrelevant.
"The cardinal now has a very important role to play for us, Lupo," Borgia said. "It is only because we have calculated how much they value him that we can expect them to deliver the relic we need to get their dear friend back." "Do you really think they'll hand over such a treasure to us, just to save the life of some old churchman?" "He is more than a mere churchman. He has worked inside the Vatican city halls of power for many long years, and is regarded by everyone to be found inside the upper echelons of the Catholic Church as a very fine man. To them, he is a great man with an unshakable faith in God. It is inconceivable that they will not hand over the relic we have demanded in return for his life. Inconceivable."
Lupo tipped his head, a little scared.